Welcome to Between Over and Next with your hosts, Holli and Robert, a happily married couple who explore the space between what was, what is, and what's to come. From career changes to navigating life's uncertainties, this dynamic duo will empower you to live your happiest life at every age and stage. So, get ready because your journey with Holli and Robert starts now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Between Over and Next. Hi, Holli.
Hi, Robert. Today we're discussing something that we love.
Chocolate?
We love chocolate. I love the world of events, event planning, event production. The main reason that I'm even in this space, besides the fact that who doesn't love a good party and a great celebration, Robert is a seasoned videographer who has been documenting life story events for 40 years.
Well, the first time I touched a video camera, I was in the 7th grade. I was proudly the captain of the audiovisual squad.
I love my husband, the geek.
At Intermediate School 51 in Staten Island. I remember vividly, I was in Mr. Tarlow's science class, and I had the camera, and we had just gotten it within the last couple of months, and I was recording something in our 7th grade science class using that video equipment. And that was the first time that I touched a video camera.
Well, what's extraordinary about that beginning is that who knew 50 years later that you were going to become a recognized documentarian working with some of the top event planners in the industry?
I'm fortunate professionally in a lot of ways. But one of the ways, and you were there right by my side, to be part of an industry that was just forming. Prior to portable video recording equipment, in order to record movement in an event of any kind,
Was film,
including electronic news gathering, ENG. News stories were shot on film.
So you at the beginning of the video industry.
Well, we formed it. We made an industry.
True.
We pivoted from nothing, or from what was in many cases silent movies of life events. Sound, movement, life encompasses all of those things.
Video was a new medium when you came on the scene, but events are days of sight, sound, and action. And what we're going to shed light on today is what it takes to bring an event from concept to reality with successful outcomes. So whether you're a professional planner or event organizer, if you are a parent or an engaged couple planning a wedding or a special event, and actually anyone that loves events.
And even if you don't love events, this is for you, because regardless of who you are on the planet, at some point during one's life, you plan events.
We've really seen a wide variety of events. We work with a variety of people. And importantly, I want you to know, we are event producers. We produced Wedding Podcast Network. Then we did produce the 21st Century Bride kind of pop-up at-home event. And we have produced many other events for clients of ours. We have worked with one-to-one. We've worked with one-to-many. When I met you in Bayonne, New Jersey, and I was living in New York, you were custom video productions that became absolute video when I came on the scene.
Right.
What were those events like that you were documenting?
I created a videography business from nothing because my parents had purchased one of the first camcorders that were available. And it was a Canon camcorder, and it was an 8mm video. And as soon as they purchased it, I made it my own. So I was in my 20s at that point. I never pursued video and photography professionally through college. I was a psychology major. I don't know why. At the time, I was working for Bankers Trust Company, the financial field. And because I had this camera and learning how to use it, I approached a photographer who had a studio in Bayonne, Verga Studios, Eddie Verga. And I pitched him on the fact that he was a photographer doing events, but he wasn't offering video services. So I proposed to him that I be his video guy and that he would be able to book weddings that included both photography and videography. So at that point, I created this business for myself, and then he started to hire me. I was working at Bankers Trust Company Monday to Friday, and I was shooting and editing weddings on the weekend. And at one point, I was making more money on the weekends than I was during the week at the bank. So I was in a perfect position to pivot, and it was my first major pivot in life and in business. And I walked away from a corporate position at Bankers Trust Company.
With a regular paycheck.
Regular paycheck every 2 weeks with benefits, with a savings incentive program.
I didn't know Robert when he was at Bankers Trust. I have only known you as a videographer.
Right. It was a challenging point in my life because I was pivoting out of that corporate comfort zone to becoming an entrepreneur. I started to do events, and many were in Bayonne, Jersey City areas, and many were American Legion Hall events, what would be considered today as low end compared to what I started to do years following. These were events that, to this day, and I still remember, I was treated so well as a vendor by not only the clients, but the people who worked at these places. I remember how well I used to be taken care of. Do you have something to eat? Here's something to drink. It sticks with me today, decades and decades later, that it didn't matter what venue you were in or how much money people were spending or weren't spending. It comes down to how you make people feel and how people make you feel. And throughout my career, I would get accolades from clients, many of which never referenced the video work per se, but how great it was to work with me and how I made them feel, which ultimately to me means a lot, in making that impression. But I was only able to operate that way because of the years and years of experience and seeing all kinds of situations with all kinds of personalities.
Prior to connecting with Robert and entering this amazing space and industry, my family always loved to plan events. We had a 50th birthday party for my father, a 5 and 10, no exaggeration, in Manhattan. We're talking about 30 plus years ago. We had my parents' 25th wedding anniversary party at Horn and Hardart Automat in the city. We had my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary party in Montana on Long Island. We always had a videographer. And anything we've had together, once I started working with you when I came home from our honeymoon, everything we did had that touch of excellence. We are going to provide today this behind-the-scenes look with valuable insights to help you plan and produce successful and memorable events. And it all starts with the vision. When you're starting an event, what are the first steps in defining the vision? Because it certainly is going to evolve throughout the planning.
I think some of the things may seem obvious. I think it all starts with when you choose to have your event. The day on the calendar dictates a lot of the vision.
Date is probably the first major decision. When we were deciding our wedding date, we met of March of 1991. We were engaged 6 months later and then married 6 months later. So we were married a year later.
Right.
And we really wanted the day and date of when we met. but that didn't connect with the venue that we ultimately chose. So we had to be flexible, which is an important part of the process. But we did want a March date.
There are situations where getting the date that you want may or may not be possible. As we came out of COVID, after so many cancellations of events, postponements of events, people were clamoring for dates, and people were booking every day of the week, when in the past that wasn't the case. You would have more of a selection of places if you were planning a Friday wedding or a Sunday wedding or even a Thursday wedding. During peak time after COVID, you jockeyed and hoped you could get a Monday or a Tuesday booking. But having said that, you need to decide when on the calendar, because it affects everything. Your guests, your vendors, your decor, your attire, your food selections. You don't serve a bevy of hot soups at a July barbecue, right? That date on the calendar is the starting point of any event. You can't plan an event without a when and a where.
Then you think about where you want to have the event. Then you're talking about the number of guests, which is a very impactful part of it.
There is a very simple equation that people can use to almost guarantee a successful event. And that is taking all of the things that you hated about any event you've ever been to, subtract that from all of the things that you love and have enjoyed at every event that you've gone to. You add that back, and what you're left with is a successful event.
And do what you want. Don't let anyone tell you you can't.
Right.
That is such a great piece of advice, Robert. I'm going to encourage you to use a vision board. I know Lindsay had so many Pinterest boards. It's so easy online. Continue to visualize your event and refine it as you are in the planning stages. There's no right or wrong. This is your event. Remember that.
But you need to take different sections of your world into account when you are planning an event. You have to take into account your inner circle, your family, if you're planning a wedding, your bridal party. And then, of course, you have to take into account your guests. You would hope that the people you're inviting are important to you. So if you're planning an event, let's say, and you're choosing a holiday weekend, and most of your guests will be traveling to you from out of town, then you have to take into account that those travel arrangements will need to be made further in advance. It would require more coordination if people are flying in, because flights may be booked. They may be more expensive. Traveling, via car may take extra time. When in that holiday weekend are you planning your event? So all of those factors, even though you may say, oh, this is a fantastic, idea, let's have it on this holiday. You have to look at the ripple effect, but taking your guests into account is really an important part of that whole check.
Put yourself in their shoes, because often hosts of guests do what they want no matter what.
Well, they should. I mean, it's their money, it's their party. If you have a problem, then you don't go. The thing I always shared with my clients is that people will react to how you're reacting as a host. So if the hosts are out of sorts and upset about something or having issues,
and not smiling,
well, that affects all of the guests, because people get a vibe and know when something's up and all of that. So as a host, if you're going to let all of the small things that may happen that are unplanned, and there will be,
and they always say, don't sweat the small stuff.
If the shade of pink on that flower is just not quite right, nobody will know unless you're making a big deal out of it. So
don't make a big deal out of it.
I've seen bridezillas that you couldn't even imagine how they're handling things for just the littlest problem. And then I've seen brides that have been challenged with hurricanes at an outdoor wedding where she was just so, it didn't matter. Her gown at the bottom where what was covered in mud.
Because she decided she's not going to let that get in the way.
Weather is a big factor for a lot of people. You can't control weather.
You have to set priorities. You have to decide what matters most to you. You have to be realistic, which lots of people don't even realize how much things cost, Robert. Who pays for what? That has to be discussed and communicated. It has to be clear.
Yes, and there is really only one way to completely control the budget, and that is very simply controlling your guest list. Your guest list dictates the budget, because when you go to a venue to book catering, right, and they tell you this is $100 per person, now you're going to add in your tax and gratuity. So now you're adding another 30% to that. Then you've got extra tables. So now you're going to have extra centerpieces and more food and everything else involved, more bar, more favors. Everything is controlled by the number of guests that you have. So controlling your guest list will help you control your budget.
And that's the biggest number, because then there are other things that you could decide to have or not have, or to be more thoughtful about that expenditure, whether it be about decor and flowers. That is personal and preferential. Then you have the print collateral, the invitations. Then you have other options. You might want a photo booth. That's an add-on. You have entertainment, music. That's a big expense. Are you having a DJ or a band? What do you want? How much are you going to budget for that? Look at the whole scope of the budget and manage it.
There are pre-parties, there are post-parties. Your priorities are your priorities, and people should not tell you what your priorities should be. But just remember one thing. Ultimate experience that you're creating for your guests and for yourself is not dependent on anything, because nobody cares about the things. People care about who's together. And any event that you're going to have, from a simple birthday gathering of people to the most elaborate of events, weddings, anniversaries, all of those are singular moments. You will never have all of those people back in that space together again. Period. End of story. It's a singular moment. So to me, and again, it comes from who I am, to make sure that you preserve that in whatever way you can, because so much of what we spend on an event is a rental and is something at the end of the event that may get thrown away.
So that's my cue to plug the importance of having a videographer at your wedding, because it wasn't on the list for very long. And I understand that I am married to and I sleep with a videographer. But I will tell you, documenting the times of your lives matter. These are your special moments. Your photos and your video is the most precious investment.
Because a skilled documentarian will help you preserve all of those things that are gone. And more importantly, not the things that are gone, but the people. Because let's face it, as we get older, we lose generations. And the only way that we can preserve that for the future is through documenting it. Now, listen, as much as people may say that people are always taking pictures and video with their phones, to me, it's a blessing with some limitations. And we've used this in our marketing as videographers. Imagine the chance to watch your grandparents come down the aisle. For our grandchildren, they'll have that
Robert's advice is wise, and we highly encourage you to have photo and video at your wedding. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. Once you've chosen your venue, once you're ready to sign a contract, you can discuss all of those details and ask, can you throw in that ice cream sundae bar? Can you reduce the minimum number of guests? You may get a no, but you also might get a yes. But when you are choosing your venue, the factors that you should consider is the location. Some people have a destination wedding, and that may work for that family. Or you're going to have it within a 1 or 2 hour drive for most of your guests. You are going to think about the capacity. We've been to plenty of weddings where that dance floor was very small.
Yeah, and a bit of advice to anyone planning a wedding in a venue is you never want to have your guest count at the maximum capacity of the room. So a venue will tell you that their room holds 200 people. They may or may not tell you that it's most comfortable at 160 people because they obviously will make more money at 200 people, and just because their capacity limit is 200, you never, ever want to have your event at the maximum capacity, period.
So smart. And then you want to consider the ambiance of what you're looking for, whether it be rustic, like Lindsay and Elliot wanted, or formal in a city hotel. Is it more than one wedding at the venue or event at the venue? Does that matter to you? Where are the bathrooms?
Are there enough bathrooms? Do you want your guests waiting in line to use the bathroom? Do you want your people waiting in line to get a drink?
What beverages do they even offer at the bar service?
Right.
If there's an open bar.
How many bartenders will there be? Will it be enough to serve my guests? All of those questions may or may not be asked, because if you don't have the experience or you don't have someone with you to remind you to ask those questions, is there a coat check? Is that extra?
If not, do you have a coat rack where they can put the coat? We made sure that there was a coat rack at every event, no matter what venue we had.
And if there weren't, we rented coat racks for people to hang their coats.
We did something extraordinary at Lindsay's wedding, and it's something I want to share with all of you, because I believe you should have the very best event possible. One of the things that we love, and Robert mentioned this earlier, when you go to events, see what you like and you don't like. Who doesn't love a good cocktail hour? Originally, when we were at Lindsay's venue, pre-COVID, they had a family-style service for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
During COVID, we had some time to think, and we kept thinking, what's the best part of an event? It's the cocktail hour. So we did an extended cocktail hour. And we're still getting rave reviews on it to this day, 2.5 years later.
Well, as opposed to sitting people...
All of our events, by the way, mostly are cocktail style.
My thoughts on wedding receptions are that they're quite often dictated by what's happening in the kitchen and the courses that are being served. And I have been to countless weddings where great dance floor activity and revelry has been punctuated and stopped because the salad is now being served. And we'd like you to go sit down and eat your salad. That is not what you do. You read a room. But if you've got 200 guests and a kitchen that is worried about getting their courses out, then the action's going to stop. So through the years, we learned that, and we knew that when we were going to plan that it wasn't going to be like that. So there are two ways in which to avoid that from happening. And one of them is the way we did it, because we had all of our food up front during a long cocktail hour.
90 minutes.
And then upstairs in the reception for Lindsay and Elliot, it was more just snack foods and dancing.
And then dessert.
So you don't necessarily have to do that in the way you would achieve not interrupting the flow of the party itself, is to have your wedding reception more like restaurant service, where each course is served in succession and you get the eating out of the way. And then you spend the rest of the evening partying and having a good time. If you think about it, you don't go to a restaurant and then sit down and then get up and walk around and then sit down and eat your salad or appetizer, then get up and walk around and then come back and now eat your dinner half an hour after that when it's now 10:30 at night. So why not have dinner all in a row and have that done in 35 or 40 minutes as you would at a restaurant, and then the rest of the evening is spent socializing and having a good time and not being stopped by your salad is now being served. Please take your seat.
And this is all about the guest experience. Importantly, what do you want your guests to remember? You've documented some amazing events.
I had a client who used me for a few events. Carl and Leon and Rita. Leon and Rita are brother and sister. And they would throw very elaborate parties, many of which were themed parties. And they knew how to have a good time. One of the things that they always did at all of their parties that sticks with me because I thought it was brilliant is they would have banquet tables, round tables, long tables, didn't matter, 12 people, 14 people. And at each table, they would always have an empty seat at a place setting. At every single table, there was one empty seat at the table. And that seat was there so that Carl and Leon and Rita could go to any of the tables of their guests and be seated with them at any point during the party. And that was a standard for them. And I always just thought how amazing that gesture was, whether they actually came and sat down there, and they did throughout the evening. One of them always made a visit to a table. Thinking about, why they're there. They're there to have the most important people to them surround them for whatever event this was, and wanted to be able to spend a little bit of quality time with them. So that always stuck with me. There was that 50th birthday party that I did at Cipriani on 42nd Street that had for the Beach Boys for entertainment. You could have anybody you want as long as you're willing to pay to have them there. There's no secret to having a star at your event.
When it comes to logistics and coordination, we highly believe in people hiring event planners, whether it be for the whole event concept to completion or even just day of, so everything runs smoothly. Some of the tips that we would recommend, because there are a number of things to coordinate: transportation, accommodations, scheduling, on-site management. Clear communication matters in maintaining event flow. Always have a backup plan, creating a detailed timeline and itinerary, and share it with all the stakeholders. You have gotten pages from your event producers, really minute by minute, of what's going on, what to expect, manage expectations, and also to regularly check in with your vendors to ensure they're aligned with your vision and your timing. We had multiple phone calls with the officiant, with the musicians,
and now
with the venue.
And now it's so much easier with online meetings that those channels of communication should be open for you to utilize, and it's much more convenient than having to schedule an in-person meeting with your professionals, especially once the initial meeting is done. Professionals, anyone, we're not mind readers. So the things that most often have possibly slipped through the cracks over the years were generally things that were never communicated. So don't expect that your wedding professionals can read anyone's mind and know what you want from them. Communicating your desires, what you want, and more importantly, what you don't want, is critical to you ending up with something that ultimately you'll be pleased with.
That was something I remember going over with Good Noise, the amazing band that we had for Lindsay's wedding. From ceremony to cocktail hour to reception, on the music selections, the father-daughter dance with all Bruce Springsteen tunes. Really, really special moments, and it was seamless. They
Because-
listened to all of our requests
Yes.
and delivered, over-delivered. It was really special. When it comes to vendors, your network matters. Relationships really matter. You want to select reliable vendors. You want to negotiate contracts. And you want a collaboration. You want everyone to feel good about their part in the event.
And take care of your vendors on the day of your event. Make sure they're well fed. Make sure they have what they need. Make sure that parking spots near the venue are secured.
Be clear on the
That's
timing of when
really
you want them to
important.
arrive and
Correct.
when they may leave. There may
Because-
be overtime involved.
Because a happy vendor is a vendor that's going to do whatever they can to make you happy. So just be kind and nice, and believe me, it goes a really, really long way.
And you want your team to be calm.
I remember the brother of a bride one time telling me, we were at the bride's house as they were getting ready. There was the usual chaos that's happening as people are getting ready and people moving in and out. And I was just there doing my thing, capturing what's going on. And he said to me, how can you be so calm with what's going on? I said, how would you feel if I was in a panic as well? He says, you're right. If you have the right professionals around you, they're going to offer you a sense of calm when things are going what you may think is a little bit off the rails, but it's just kind of normal. If you have the right people around you, and it goes back to what I said earlier about how people react to not only what you're doing, but how you've made them feel during the experience, is really what you want to have surrounding you on that day.
So if you are a professional or just someone who likes to plan lots of events, it's really important to have a post-event evaluation. You need to gather feedback, analyze the outcomes, and you always need to identify areas for improvement.
Most of the time, hosts don't have the presence of mind to look around the room and to see what's going on and the vibe. They're in the midst of it, right? But as a guest, you can kind of scope the room and see people having a good time or not. And that doesn't mean that you've got to be up dancing. Not everyone, loves to dance, but you can tell when people are engaged with one another and having a good time. And I think that is completely dictated by the hosts in the room, how they're acting and interacting. If they're smiling, if they're having a good time, that's going to rub off on the guests, and the guests will join in your good time. If you're pouting because something's not going as planned, well, guess what? People are going to pick up on that vibe. Can't hide that. You want to be around. People shouldn't be saying, where's the bride and groom? Where's the bride and groom? It's the little things that I, as an observer, a paid observer all these years, and then not only being there on the day of an event, but spending countless hours in post-production, poring over the footage from the event and piecing that together to tell the story to someone who wasn't there.
Imitation is the best form of flattery. We've been inspired by themes of events that you've been to. When you documented that 100th birthday party in the Hamptons, you made note to self, Robert. You said, I really like this idea. And I think you were in your 30s at the time.
It was something I put away because I knew that it was just such a great concept.
And there was a pink and blue theme.
Right. It was a 100th birthday party because
Right.
two people, husband and wife, were turning 50
Each.
each.
So anyways, we did that. We had a 100th birthday
We
party.
have to credit Preston Bailey for that idea because he was the event planner on that party out in the Hamptons.
You've worked with so many beautiful event producers, and you've been a valued part of their team. There's always new trends and innovations happening in the world of events. Emerging trends right now are virtual events, and we're going to share our free PDF with 11 tips to engage your audience virtually. Sustainability has become something that's really important, and experiential elements. People love to be part of something. So we encourage you to incorporate fresh ideas into your planning of events. Overall, we highly recommend that you personalize your events, create an unforgettable experience for your guests. Attention to detail, the small touches can make a big difference. And always, and we say this in so many of our episodes, be flexible and adaptable. There are lots of decisions to make when you're planning an event. We hope that our experience, our expertise can help you plan. Last week, we discussed non-negotiables and excellence. Next week, we're going to introduce you to the fascinating world of Myers-Briggs and personality types, because ultimately, it is about working well together, like we work together, Robert.
So you're not going to want to miss that episode coming up after this.
We hope today's discussion provided you with valuable insights and inspiration. Remember, it's all about creating an exceptional experience from vision to reality.
Thanks for joining us on Between Over and Next, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Between Over and Next. We hope you enjoyed this episode and found it meaningful and insightful.
If you value it to be worthwhile, please share it with your friends and family.
We would really appreciate it if you could take a moment to write a review for us. Your feedback will help us continue to create content that resonates with you.
And don't forget, in the show notes, you can find all the relevant links mentioned in this episode, from accessing free downloads to visiting our website and more.
If you have any questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. Simply send us an email. Our email address is hello@hollyandrobert.com. We're always excited to connect with our listeners.
So until next time, thank you again for joining us on Between Over and Next.
Thank you for listening to Between Over and Next, the podcast that navigates the twists and turns of life with courage, laughter, and a whole lot of inspiration. Tune in every Tuesday to hang out with Holli and Robert on your favorite podcast platform. Visit hollyandrobert.com and follow them on social media to ignite your passion and fuel your dreams.